Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Hello.
This is where we take a look at the source materials you're interested in,
Right.
really dig into them, and pull out the key takeaways for you.
Yeah, our job is basically to guide you through this stuff, make sure the vocabulary, the concepts, they all make sense and, you know, actually stick.
And today, we're focusing on some, well, specific bits of the English language. We're going to unpack a few words, a few phrases that give you tools to talk about things that are not so great.
Right. Some are really quite terrible, actually.
Exactly. Or that feeling we all get sometimes when you're just completely, utterly bored.
So think of this as adding to your descriptive toolkit. We'll look at what these words mean, the kind of nuances they carry, and how they actually work in sentences. It's all based on the definitions and examples we've got.
Yeah, getting a really clear handle on some powerful ways to describe things. We're basically going to teach you these, like we're right there with you.
Let's dive in. So let's start with a really strong adjective. It describes something exceptionally bad. The word is atrocious.
Atrocious. Yeah, that word.
Yeah.
It just sounds serious, doesn't it? Like it means something properly awful.
It absolutely does. So looking at our material, atrocious is an adjective, and it has, well, two main pretty powerful meanings.
Okay.
First, it can mean horrifyingly wicked, for actions that are morally terrible, deeply wrong, things that really shock people.
Wicked.
And second, and this is probably more common in everyday use, it means of a very poor quality. Just dreadful.
Okay. So when we say something's atrocious, we're not just saying it's like bad or not very good. It's way beyond that.
Exactly. That's the key thing, the intensity. It signals something appalling, something that, really warrants strong disapproval because it's so bad.
Right.
It's like the difference between a meal that's a bit disappointing and one you literally can't eat. That's the kind of level we're talking about.
That difference in intensity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crucial. So let's see how it works. The examples really show the range, like for quality, right?
Yeah.
The food at that restaurant was absolutely atrocious. I couldn't even finish it.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of the dreadfully poor quality meaning. Calling food atrocious here, it means it wasn't just, It was terribly bad. So bad the person says they couldn't even finish it. That really highlights the extreme poor quality.
Right. It paints a really clear picture. A truly awful meal. Okay, what about performances? Her singing performance was quite atrocious. She was off-key the whole time.
Again, it's about quality. Dreadfully poor quality, specifically in her singing, being off-key the whole time. That's not just one bad note.
No.
It's consistently wrong, probably painful to listen to. So calling it atrocious tells you just how dreadful that experience was for the listener.
Yeah, you can almost hear it. Ouch. It's also used for situations like weather. The weather during our vacation was atrocious, raining heavily every day.
Dreadful conditions, yeah. When you call weather atrocious, it implies it wasn't just a bit rainy.
Right.
It means it was truly terrible. Like continuous heavy rain, maybe storms, conditions that basically ruined the vacation. It's a really strong way to say how unhappy you were with it.
You can feel the disappointment in that sentence. Okay, customer service too. The company's customer service was atrocious, and they were no help at all.
This points to dreadfully poor support. And the key part is they were no help at all. That explains why it was atrocious. It wasn't just slow or slightly unhelpful. It was a complete failure, zero assistance. That pushes it from just bad service into a genuinely terrible, appalling experience.
It's a total breakdown.
Great.
Mistakes can be atrocious too. He made an atrocious mistake that cost the team the game.
Yeah, this wasn't a small slip-up. An atrocious mistake is a dreadful error. A blunder so bad, with such poor judgment maybe, that it had a huge negative consequence, like losing the whole game.
Yeah.
The word really emphasizes the severity of that mistake.
A real game-losing error.
Okay.
And living conditions. The living conditions in the old apartment were atrocious.
Appallingly poor. This isn't just describing an apartment that's a bit old-fashioned. Atrocious living conditions suggest something much worse. Maybe unsanitary, unsafe, falling apart.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, lacking basic things you need. It describes a place that's shockingly bad, really unacceptable to live in.
Right. Conditions nobody should live in. Wow. Even in art, the artist's attempt at realism was atrocious.
Terribly bad quality in the execution, yes.
Well,
The artist tried to make something look real, but it fails so badly it gets called atrocious. It's a very harsh negative judgment on their skill or the final result.
So an attempt at realism that was dreadfully unrealistic.
Pretty much, yeah. In the
Oh.
worst possible way.
Okay. And something many of us know well.
Yeah.
The traffic in the city was atrocious during rush hour.
Dreadful congestion. When traffic's atrocious, it's not just a bit slow or heavy, it's terribly bad. Like, the kind of gridlock that's completely debilitating, the experience of being stuck in it is truly awful, especially during those peak times.
Yes, that feeling.
Hmm.
That fits atrocious perfectly. Okay, now what about the other meaning you mentioned? The horrifyingly wicked one. There's an example. The criminal committed an atrocious act that shocked the community.
Right, this shifts to the moral side of things. An atrocious act here is a horrifyingly wicked deed.
Oh, wait.
It's something morally awful, profoundly wrong, often involving cruelty or violence. It's so terrible that it has a big impact, like shocking everyone in the community. This meaning carries a heavy weight of moral judgment.
An act so bad it really shakes people. Okay, so summing up atrocious then. It's the word you reach for when something is way beyond just bad.
Exactly.
It's either dreadful quality or horrifyingly wicked. It really adds force to your description.
Precisely. It gives you a specific way to communicate that extreme level, whether it's poor quality or moral wrongness.
Got it. Okay, let's switch gears now. Let's talk about a noun that's pretty fundamental to communication. Audience.
Ah, audience. Yeah, it's interesting because the basic idea seems simple, right? The people you're talking to or performing for.
Yeah.
But the scope of the word is actually quite wide.
Right. It's not just people physically sitting in seats, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, one core meaning is the group of spectators or listeners at a public event. You know, a play, a concert, a meeting. But it goes way beyond that physical group. It also means the readership of a book,
Oh, right.
or the viewership of a broadcast, TV show, radio, even something like this. Anyone consuming the media.
So basically, anyone who's on the receiving end of some kind of performance or presentation or media, they're the audience.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, let's look at how that works out, the classic example. The audience gave the performers a standing ovation.
Yep, that's the traditional sense. The people gathered at a live event, watching actors in this case. And their reaction, the ovation, is collective. It comes from that group.
It shows they were engaged, they approved. Okay, now thinking about adapting your message. The comedian tailored his jokes to suit his specific audience.
Right. Here, audience means a particular group of listeners. The comedian is changing his material, the jokes, the references, maybe the style specifically for them, because he knows what works for one group might totally bomb with another. Understanding your audience is vital there.
Knowing who you're talking to really changes what you say. Okay. The film aims to appeal to a broad audience.
So here, audience is used in the viewership sense. It means a wide range of potential viewers. The movie isn't niche. It's designed to attract lots of different kinds of people, trying for mass appeal.
Reaching as many viewers as possible.
Okay.
And for writers, the author held a book signing for her loyal audience.
That's the readership meaning. The author's meeting her dedicated readers, the people who read her books. And loyal describes them, they're committed fans.
The people who really connect with her writing. Got it.
Yeah.
The politician addressed a small but enthusiastic audience at the town hall meeting.
This combines the public event idea with a description of the audience itself. It's a group of listeners, yes, but noted as being small, compact, but very engaged, enthusiastic.
Right.
It shows the quality of an audience isn't just about size.
Small but mighty, you could say. Okay. The television show reaches a global audience.
Viewership again, but emphasizing the huge scale people all over the world watching. A vast, diverse audience.
Spanning the globe. The play struggled to connect with its younger audience.
This points to a specific subgroup within the potential audience, young people, that the play wasn't reaching effectively. It highlights that an audience isn't always just one uniform group. It can have different segments with different tastes.
A challenge reaching a certain demographic.
Okay.
Okay. She performed in front of a live studio audience.
This specifies the setting. It's a group physically there in the TV studio watching live. They give immediate feedback, like laughter, which becomes part of the show itself.
That energy you get from people being right there. The classical music concert attracted a sophisticated audience.
Here, audience means the listeners at the concert, but it adds sophisticated to describe their perceived taste or background. It's a way of characterizing the attendees.
Sort of describing the typical person who goes to those concerts.
Okay.
The marketing team analyzed their target audience before launching the campaign.
Now, this is a really important use. The advertisers are studying the specific group they want to reach. their intended consumers.
Right.
Understanding this target audience, what they want, what they respond to, is absolutely essential for marketing to work.
Knowing exactly who you need to persuade makes sense. The keynote speaker captivated the entire audience with his insights.
This describes success. The main speaker held everyone's attention, all the listeners. Captivated implies a really high level of engagement across the whole group.
Everyone was totally hooked. A small audience gathered to watch the street performer.
Another example of a smaller group, maybe spontaneous, just people stopping to watch an entertainer outdoors, shows an audience can just form.
An impromptu audience, yeah. The news report was designed for a general audience.
Meaning, a media broadcast made for the average person. The content, the language, it's all meant to be easy to understand and relevant to most people, not just specialists.
Broadcasting for everyone, basically. The student presentation was judged by an academic audience.
Here, the group evaluating the students are scholars. The audience is defined by their expertise and their specific job in that situation judging.
An audience of experts.
Right.
The pop star's biggest challenge was maintaining her original audience.
This refers to the singer's difficulty keeping her initial fans, the people who were there from the start, engaged as her career changed.
Keeping the core fans happy. The interactive art installation invited the audience to participate.
Oh, interesting. So the art encourages viewers to do more than just look, get involved. The audience role here is active participation.
Where the line between observer and participant gets blurry. Cool. The radio station caters to a local audience.
Serving listeners in a specific area, their audience is defined by location, and the content is usually tailored to that community.
Serving the people nearby. The children in the audience giggled throughout the puppet show.
This points out a specific part of the audience, kids, and describes their reaction during the show.
The specific age group responding. He always felt nervous performing in front of a large audience.
This focuses on the size, a big crowd, as the reason for the performer's anxiety.
The pressure of lots of eyes watching. Okay. And finally, the documentary has found a niche audience interested in historical events.
Right, a film attracting a specific, smaller group with a shared interest history, in this case. A niche audience is usually smaller, but very dedicated to that topic.
A dedicated specific group. Wow, okay. So audience really is a flexible word. Why is understanding this so important for you listening?
Well, because whether you're giving a presentation, writing an email, making a video, even just telling a story to friends, knowing who your audience is changes everything about how you communicate. It affects the words you choose, your tone, the examples you give, even how you deliver the message. Being aware of your audience just makes you so much more effective, more persuasive, more engaging.
It's really about connecting with the people you're trying to reach. Seems vital, really, in any communication.
Absolutely fundamental.
Okay, let's shift gears again. Now let's talk about something most of us have definitely felt, maybe too often. That feeling of being profoundly bored.
Ah, yes, boredom. English has some great idioms for this, really vivid ways to express it, each with a slightly different feel.
Different flavors of boredom.
Kind of, yeah. Our sources give us 3 specific idioms that capture different shades or intensities of being extremely bored. They let you describe that really uncomfortable lack of anything interesting happening.
Okay, the first one is bored out of your mind.
Right, bored out of your mind. This means extremely bored, like so intensely bored you feel like your brain isn't quite working right. Yeah, the lack of stimulation is so total, it feels like it's messing with your head. Maybe making you feel a bit, stir crazy or desperate for something to happen.
It sounds like that kind of boredom where time just drags and you can't focus.
That's exactly it. It's a really emphatic way to say you're feeling that mental fog or that near desperation that comes from really severe tedium.
Okay, let's look at examples. The lecture was so dull, I was bored out of my mind.
So the talk itself was incredibly uninteresting, dull. And that lack of engagement led directly to that extreme boredom where your mind feels affected.
Right.
It wasn't just a bit boring. It was mind-numbingly dull.
The dullness was just too much. Okay, how about this one? He was so bored out of his mind during the meeting that he started counting ceiling tiles.
Classic. That's a perfect illustration. The boredom during the meeting was so intense that he had to find any mental activity, no matter how pointless.
Right.
Counting tiles is what people do when their minds are screaming for something, anything to focus on. It perfectly shows being bored out of your mind.
Yeah, that image is so clear. Your mind just grasping for anything. There was nothing to do with the party. I was bored out of my mind.
The total lack of activities or anything interesting at the party led to this peak boredom. The environment offered zero stimulation.
A really boring party. The rainy weather meant we were stuck inside, and I was bored out of my mind.
Being trapped indoors by the rain, nothing much to do, that combination leads to intense boredom, physical confinement plus lack of options.
Stuck inside with your mind just idling.
Yeah.
He finds watching paint dry more exciting than being bored out of his mind in that class.
Okay, that's obviously an exaggeration.
Uh-huh.
But it really emphasizes how incredibly boring he finds that class. It's saying the class is so tedious that even the most famously boring activity imaginable, watching paint dry, seems more stimulating than how his mind feels in that class.
That's a strong statement about a boring class. If I have to listen to another story about his fishing trip, I'll be bored out of my mind.
Here, the person is predicting intense boredom from a specific topic they find repetitive or uninteresting. Just the thought of hearing another fishing story makes them feel like they'll hit that peak level of mental tedium.
When you absolutely dread hearing about something again. Okay,
Yeah.
so bored out of your mind, it's about that intense, almost desperate feeling in your head from lack of stimulation.
Precisely. Now the next one. Bored stiff.
Bored, stiff. Okay, the word stiff immediately makes me think of like being rigid, uncomfortable. Is that part of it?
It absolutely is. This idiom also means extremely bored, but like you picked up, the stiff part adds this emphasis on feeling, well, rigid or immobile.
Uh-huh.
It often suggests feeling physically uncomfortable or just profoundly unresponsive because you're so uninterested.
Ah, so it brings in the body more, not just the mind.
Exactly. It adds that physical dimension. You might feel literally stiff from sitting or standing still for ages while being totally unengaged. Or just generally uncomfortable because the boredom itself makes you feel kind of mentally and physically rigid. It's a deep boredom where you feel sort of stuck and unresponsive.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's see the examples. The presentation was so tedious, I was bored stiff by the end of it.
Right. The talk was incredibly boring, and by the time it finished, the listener felt that extreme boredom, probably made worse by having to sit still for so long without engaging. The tedium led to that uncomfortable, stiff feeling.
The dullness actually made them feel physically uncomfortable. There was nothing on TV, and I was just sitting there, bored stiff.
This perfectly captures that physical immobility aspect.
Yeah.
Nothing to watch, so the person is just sitting, physically rigid, feeling profoundly bored. Inactivity plus no mental stimulation equals bored stiff.
Just sitting there like a statue, completely bored. He looked absolutely bored stiff during the long ceremony.
So his appearance showed his extreme boredom. The stiff look suggests he wasn't moving much, maybe had a rigid posture, a blank expression. His body language was shouting, "I am bored."
You could literally see the boredom in how he held himself. If I have to do one more repetitive task, I'll be bored stiff.
The anticipation here is that another monotonous chore will cause this feeling. The repetitive nature of the task, needing you there physically but not mentally, leads to that feeling of being physically and mentally rigid with boredom.
The task itself makes you feel trapped and bored. The lecture droned on, and I was bored stiff.
The endless, monotonous talk droned on caused that profound boredom, manifesting as feeling bored stiff. The sheer length and lack of anything interesting made the listener feel physically stuck and mentally checked out.
Just endless, unchanging talk leading to rigidity. The security guard looked bored stiff standing there all night.
Yeah, the job involves standing still for a long time, often with nothing happening. That physical posture, combined with the lack of events, would make the guard look extremely bored and unresponsive, physically stiff from the boredom of the job.
Long periods of inactivity leading to visible boredom. Okay, so bored stiff adds that layer of physical discomfort or rigidity to the extreme boredom.
Exactly. Now for our third one. This is the one that uses really dramatic exaggeration to express the absolute peak of boredom. Bored to death.
Bored to death. Wow, okay. That sounds pretty final. Like the ultimate level of boredom.
It really is meant to be the ultimate. This idiom means you're so extremely bored, it feels like you might actually die from the lack of interest or excitement. Obviously, it's hyperbole, exaggeration, but it conveys that the boredom is so intense, so overwhelming, it feels almost unbearable.
It's not literal, thank goodness, but it gets across that feeling that the boredom is so bad it feels like it's killing you, slowly.
That's it, exactly. It's the strongest way possible to say how unendurable the situation feels.
Okay, let's see this exaggeration in practice. The movie was so slow, I was bored to death by the first 10 minutes.
Right. The film was incredibly unengaging, slow, and that feeling of extreme boredom, the bored to death level, kicked in almost instantly, just 10 minutes in. The speed shows how badly the movie failed to grab their attention.
Maximum boredom achieved very quickly. I hate waiting in lines. I'm always bored to death.
Here, waiting in queues is presented as something that always causes this ultimate exaggerated boredom for this person. The inactivity, the slow progress, it just feels profoundly tedious to them.
A very common source of deathly boredom for many people, I think. There was literally nothing to do all day, and I was bored to death.
The complete lack of anything to do for the whole day led to this extreme feeling, described with the strongest possible hyperbole. The emptiness of the day felt unbearable.
A whole day with zero stimulation. Felt fatal, figuratively speaking. If I have to sit through another one of his endless stories, I'll be bored to death.
Again, the anticipation. Listening to another long, rambling story is expected to be so tedious it will cause this bored-to-death feeling. The length and likely repetition are the key here.
Predicting the absolute worst boredom from hearing those stories again. The museum exhibit was so uninteresting, I was bored to death.
Even though they were in a museum, which you might expect to be interesting, this particular exhibit was so dull it resulted in feeling bored to death. It completely failed to engage them.
When something potentially interesting turns out to be fatally dull, I was so bored to death that I started counting the cracks in the wall.
Ah, another desperation activity. Like counting ceiling tiles, this shows the extreme state of mind. The boredom is so overwhelming it forces the person to find any tiny thing to focus on, like imperfections on a wall.
Driven to extreme measures just to cope with the unbearable boredom. Don't ever take me to another golf tournament. I was bored to death.
This is a strong declaration based on past experience. Going to a golf tournament was profoundly boring for this person, so much so they use the ultimate hyperbole and refuse to ever do it again.
A very firm, never again, based on extreme past boredom. Okay, so bored to death is the top level, the hyperbolic way to say boredom is unbearable.
That's the one. So now we've looked at all three. Bored out of your mind, bored stiff, and bored to death. How do they stack up against each other?
Well, they all mean extremely bored, clearly.
Right.
But bored out of your mind seems mostly about the effect on your brain.
Right.
Feeling fuzzy, maybe a bit frantic from the lack of input.
Yeah, that's a good summary. It's emphatic about the mental state, listlessness, maybe restlessness from having nothing to engage your mind.
And then bored stiff adds that physical dimension, feeling uncomfortable, rigid, maybe physically stuck because of the boredom.
Exactly. It emphasizes the immobility, the physical discomfort that can come with long periods of inactivity and lack of interest, the boredom that makes you feel physically unresponsive.
And bored to death is just the most extreme version.
It's the hyperbole, yeah, the exaggeration. Saying the boredom is so overwhelming it feels like it could actually kill you even though you know it won't. It's the ultimate expression of just how bad it feels.
So you choose based on how you feel bored. Was it messing with your head?
Yeah.
Making you feel physically stuck? Or just so incredibly awful it felt unbearable?
Precisely. Understanding the differences lets you pick the idiom that really nails the specific feeling. It adds accuracy, vividness, and, well, punch to your language when you're describing being bored.
That's actually really useful. It's not just saying, I was bored. It's saying how you were bored.
Exactly. Language gives us these specific tools for a reason.
Okay. So we've covered quite a bit today. We looked at the depths of atrocious, that dreadful quality or horrifying wickedness. We unpacked audience and saw how broad it is, from live crowds to readers to viewers worldwide. And we dove into three powerful ways to talk about intense boredom. Bored out of your mind, bored stiff, and bored to death.
We've seen how atrocious gives us a strong way to condemn something truly terrible, and how knowing your audience is just crucial for communicating effectively.
And we've learned that English offers these really varied, vivid idioms for boredom, letting you pinpoint exactly how tedious something felt.
It makes you think about how these specific words shape our descriptions of negative things, doesn't it? They're not just synonyms for bad or boring. They have distinct edges, distinct uses.
Yeah. So what stands out to you listening to this? Can you think of times maybe you've used these words, or perhaps times when one of them would have been just perfect?
And maybe think about this. If language gives us such precise ways to describe negative feelings like atrocious quality or extreme boredom, does naming it so specifically help us understand it better? Does putting the right label on that exact feeling of boredom, say, make it more manageable? Or does it just make it feel more real, more concrete?
That's a really interesting thought to end on. The power of language not just to name, but maybe to shape how we deal with things.
It's what makes words so fascinating.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into English vocabulary. We hope you found it useful.
Yeah, hope to explore more sources with you again soon. Until next time.